on a Norwegian freighter, a 300-foot freighter, and all carried 12 passengers. I was working as a deckhand, and that meant I had the 12 to 4 watch. And when we arrived in Cebu, they have a little blackboard to say when the ship was sailing there, and so I knew they weren't going to leave for the next day. I really wanted to get some postcards, send something to my parents, telling them, and particularly showing them, so I wanted to get some pictures, and I saw a place where I could buy some postcards. And so anyway, I put some money in my pocket and went ashore, went down the gangway and walked into town, walked in the ways and went to a first place, and all the postcards were just of girls or whatever. It wasn't any of the area. So I walked on further, and all the places that I went to, it didn't have anything that showed pictures where I wanted, and it was really hot, and I'm now near the equator, so it's during the summer, and I see a movie theater that says air conditioned on it. And I went in, watched the movies. It was great because it was air conditioned. So then came back out and then decided, well, I'll just go back. So then I just, walked on back to the pier where the ship was tied up. But when I got to the pier, I looked and the ship wasn't there. And I so couldn't believe it that I had to resist an impulse to go look underneath the pier. Which there's a great big ship. You can't imagine, it could never fit on the pier, but it was just that strong an impulse I had. And I saw a guard, for the ship area there, and I went up to him and pretended like I, belonged there, was having just fine. But I asked him if he happened to know where the ship had been moved to, because I was hoping that it just been moved to another pier. And he said, oh, no, it's left the country. It's on its way to Hong Kong. But he said, if you wanted to know anything more about it, I should go to the agent's office. He wrote down an address on a little piece of paper and gave it to me. And then I went over and got onto a taxi, took a taxi. In those days, it was a horse-drawn carriage. We clapped it off, off we went. After about half an hour or something like that, after a while, we got to the place and he said, okay, this is it. And so I got out and I looked, but this is an old building that was all boarded up. And I said, what? And so I just had him take me back to the pier because I remember seeing a ship anchored out in the harbor that had the same insignia on the smokestack of this Klaveness shipping line that I was, the Norwegian company of the line, shipping line that I was working for. And so I figured maybe they would help me. And so I went back to there to the, and got a water taxi. And he took me over to this parked ship. Okay, and I got aboard and went up and was met by one of the mates, the second mate, I think. And I told him what my problem was, and I needed to either stay there or something. What could I do? And he said, well, since your ship has left, you're in this country illegally, and you can't stay aboard here because it's it's illegal or whatever. And so I turned around and walked back down the gangway and got aboard the little boat and went back to shore and paid the man. That was the last of my money. And on the way back, I had noticed that there was an American ship anchored, at a pier, about a mile away further to me. So I walked over to the ship. And as I got closer, I noticed that there was 2 policemen at the top of the gangway, okay, to check for papers. And of course, I didn't have my papers because I didn't come from the ship. But I didn't have any other choice, I felt. So I just acted nonchalantly, and I walked up the gangway and didn't stop to show my papers. Just walked right through, and hoping they would just assume this, as I looked obviously like a blonde there. That anyway, and my heart was pounding like mad. As every step as I walked away, headed towards, on the ship now. I was just waiting for them to call me back. They didn't. They just kept on talking, whatever. They didn't pay attention to me at all. And I heard some voices on the deck up ahead, above higher deck. And so I went up the stairs and went up to this deck, um, and, and found some men, you know, and asked to see the captain. He says, "Well, the captain's not here, but he's the first mate, and you know, what do I want?" So I tell him my story and I left behind and all that, and he says the same thing. I'm just sort of stunned, you know, sort of don't know what else to do. So I walk over to the railing, and as I'm sitting there looking at that, wondering what to do, the men are continuing talking. And they're talking about how, you know, they had run away or had been so wrong and they shouldn't have ever done it or whatever. Something anyway, and I think they're just giving me a lecture. I'm just about ready to tune them out. And he goes on and says, "But now if I was a young man and I've been left behind, I wouldn't ask for permission to stay aboard because of course it's illegal. You know, I just find a soft pile of rope, you know, on the fore aft and sleep there for the night because it's safe aboard here. And then the next day, I wouldn't worry about the agent's office being closed because they're always closed on Sunday, you know, and you just need to go there on a work day and they'll take care of you." And as I was going down, he scurried ahead and caught up with me and said, "Is that true? You don't have any money?" And I said, yeah, that's right." And so he handed me, I think 20 pesos at the time, which was, I think, $10, which at the time was a lot of money. Okay. And then he said, "Well, actually, we have a cabin back here." So he takes me to this cabin and it lets me in, you know, and I go in and shut the door and immediately lock it, turn around, and I'm just so tired. All I want to do is just take my clothes and climb to bed, okay? And as I'm just starting to do that, knock, you know, open the door, and it's the same mate. He says, "Well, too dangerous, better not. You better not stay in there." And so I went on around this cabin, and there was this rope piled there. And so I then, you know, went back to lay on the rope. And then about that time, discovered these things called mosquitoes, which are like small birds or bees or whatever. They're very big. And while I'm there trying to go to sleep and dealing with the mosquitoes and everything, I suddenly see the lights go on in this cabin. I see the two policemen go in there. So they're going to spend the night there. So I was very thankful I was on the rope in the back. The next morning, at dawn, anyway, the mate came, same mate, and come with me. And so I came with him and went into the cabin, and he hands me a cup of totally black coffee. I go ahead and I start to drink it. Well, it turns out that all the mosquitoes during the night had been biting me, so much so that I couldn't even close my hands. They were swollen. And my face was, I sort of had a hard time seeing. All the swelling went away. And then I went down Gangway, got back in a horse-drawn taxi, and went to the agent's office. And this time it was all active, typewriters clacking away in the back, you know, in there. And sure enough, I went in and found went to the right person. They done me to someone else, and finally got taken to their home, the agent's home. And then he took me out to the airport, where I flew from there to Manila. When I arrived, the agent there met me and took me to the YMCA. And so I spent the night there. And the next day they came, got me, and took me to the American consulate, where I got a temporary passport. And they took me out to the airport and flew from there to Hong Kong, where I was met by the office coolie with a letter saying to follow him. And he took me to a small little hotel. I'm now in Hong Kong before the ship because I flew. And so they put me up for a couple of days, and I stayed at this hotel, and they got me, took me back